First of all, I want to clarify, I really love A Game of Thrones. A Game of Thrones is likely my favorite fantasy book, and the second to that is The Way of Kings. But in the next two videos, I'll actually be criticizing both of these books. And first of all, I will start with A Game of Thrones. I'm really not blind to my biases. I'm really not blind to, like every book I love, there's always a criticism I have for it. And there is always a point I would love the author to improve upon. And technically speaking, what I want to do in this particular video is examine the points upon which I would love George R. R. Martin to improve. And if you have actually finished all the way to the fifth book, you can tell me if George fixes any of these things. I would actually like to settle the score with some criticisms I have seen of A Song of Ice and Fire in general that I think are not true. First of all, a lot of people criticize A Song of Ice and Fire that it is sexist, but it is not. This story is not. A lot of them, point to a lot of the rape scenes that happen during war, and I would say that is really not sexism. You see, a lot of them go as far as to actually claim that George R. R. Martin himself is sexist for having these things, but George R. R. Martin has one of the strongest female characters I have seen, especially Catelyn Stark. So it's not that George R. R. Martin is sexist, and this is really going too far, but I think people should examine why is this happening, right? I think people should examine where is this coming from. And this is coming from his depiction of the time period. What was the time period? Feudalism and during the medieval times of England. And where does that really come from? It comes from actual historical accounts. George R. R. Martin is not really, picking boogers out of his nose and just giving it to us. He is looking at history. He is seeing what happened in history, and he is depicting that. But he's doing it for spectacle, right? For a huge scale drama that is happening between 5 different warring or at least in some sort of friction houses, and this is very important. This is very interesting, first of all, but this is also very important to understand because a lot of the people who claim that he is sexist and that this story is sexist and so on and so forth fail to see this. And then there is the reality that A Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire in general actually, especially, you can see this if you have not read all the books and you have watched all of the TV show, you can see that, the story depicts a lot of war, okay? There are so many battles in A Song of Ice and Fire, it is insane. Like, there are so many battles in Game of Thrones, the TV show. There are way more in the books. There are way more in the books. So technically speaking, it is really sad when you look at this, and a lot of people do not acknowledge it, okay? He is depicting war. These things happened. I can point to so many terrible atrocities that happened in World War I, World War II, and I can also happen to point to countless other atrocities that have been committed during wars before modern industrial age with technology and weapons. And so technically speaking, George R. R. Martin is not sexist, number one. Number two, the story depicts a lot of war, and in that, there's going to be a lot of terrible things that happen. And rape is not the only thing that actually happens in the story. There's so many other things that happen besides rape. People actually get flayed, skinned alive. People get tortured. Some people's, chopped off. And there are other terrible things that are happening alongside this terrible thing, right? And all of them are just terrible. And it's all depictions of terrible things. And therefore, the artist is not really terrible. The artist is the depictor. The artist is the writer. The writer is the storyteller. And the storyteller is trying to tell you these things. He hasn't done them. People behave as if he did these things and, he should be cancelled for it. But I think that's complete bogus, complete BS. Cut it off. Now let's get into criticizing the Game of Thrones and give it the punch it needs. First of all, the story does not achieve good balance. What I would like George R. R. Martin to improve is actually achieve better balance in tone. Because in Grimdark, this is, by the way, not just with a Game of Thrones, this is full of grimdark fantasy, where the authors do not really make an attempt to make sure that the grim is balanced with moments of levity, of moments of brevity, technically speaking, light-hearted moments. And this is important for me. Because if all you have, you see, this is important for the human brain in general, because if you depict only one theme, quickly the human brain becomes desensitized to this theme. You cannot expect alcohol to have the same effect after the 100th time. And this means I really do not find myself engaging with a lot of the gore and grim dark elements in the story. Initially, they are very impactful, but quickly that is all there is. All there is just violence, war, and even in the even in the moments that the story is quiet, like, you know, Sansa is in a bedchamber in King's Landing in the castle, right, in the keep. Well, George R. Martin is going to go and talk about background wars that happened. And so the story, every paragraph, it's just terrible, terrible, terrible blood, war, gore, violence, 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 violence. And this means toward the end of A Game of Thrones, when as I was reading, I really did not find myself engaged with any of the violence that was happening after, you know, Ned Stark. Boom. It's really not interesting. And then the next thing I would like George R. Martin to improve on is actually the writing style. The writing style in the story is very, very much overdone. And also there's this weird thing where George writes the chapters and the paragraphs such that it really makes it much more difficult to follow. It's very, very difficult to follow what is happening and the events that are taking place. This does something I do not like, which is it forces me to reread sometimes entire paragraphs in order to actually catch up on what is happening completely, right? You have a general idea what's happening, of course, yes, but you still need to actually read again in order to pick up all the things. Reading A Game of Thrones, like, the writing style of George R. Martin is so bad that reading A Game of Thrones the second time, it feels like a completely different story. And that shouldn't really be happening. If that happens, you know, you have failed miserably, okay? You have failed miserably as an author because it means you didn't convey what was happening initially well. The first time I finished The Way of Kings, I felt completely satisfied. I felt I had the entire image, okay? And that's because of the writing style of Brandon Sanderson. And I would like, you know, George R. Martin to have a more clear writing style to a point where we do not really struggle to follow the events as much as you know, we do currently, or at least I do. I definitely struggle following the events fully, right? And so those are the two major problems I have with the story. Everything else is perfect. Everything else is flawless. I would love more balance in tones where it's not just gore and violence all the time and gritty, muddy stuff. And number two, writing style, it has to be more clear and more evident to a point where if I read the third book and I finish it, well, there's going to be this thing where at the end of it, I don't really want to have to reread the whole book in order to get the point, okay? I would like to read other books, okay, by other authors. I love to diversify my diet and I love to read a lot of other different authors. Anyhow, so that is my biggest two problems with A Game of Thrones. It's not major. Literally, it's not about craft. It's just about writing and also tone. So I hope that you enjoyed. I hope you took something from this. Next time, we'll be talking about The Way of Kings and my problem with that, specifically the character of Shallan. Yeah, I hope that you enjoyed that. Have a nice day.